Hey everybody, it's Sergio with the RideShare Guy. Today I have a very special guest, Senator Kevin Priola from Colorado. Welcome, Senator.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sergio.
Absolutely, yeah. Going back a little background, I had a wonderful conversation with Senator Priola about 8 months ago when I was in Denver, and he did remember me when he saw me just now. Um, but let's talk a little bit about the new bill that you are the prime sponsor of, SB 75, if I correctly recall it.
Correct. I have so many different numbers out. I'm starting to get confused on the numbers, but I was just looking at some of the changes we're going to make. But yeah, it's up in committee next week, and I just really want to applaud everybody that's been working on it up to this point. We've spent probably a solid 7, 8 months, doing stakeholder work, really having both sides sit in a room across from each other, and really building understanding of the nuances and the problems that each side is trying to address or figure out a way to address. So it's really been good.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we even get into the details of the bill, if I can help you any shape or form with whatever it is that is in the bill or the amendments, I'm available. As a rideshare driver's advocate, obviously this is very pleasing to me that we see this type of bill, the transparency bill it's called. So you tell us the details, what's in it.
Okay, well we're working on what's called a strike below right now. That's gonna move a lot of different language around in it, just because we had to get it introduced per a deadline. So the understanding, of course, from both sides is that we would introduce it, but we would immediately change it or start making some tweaks to it, not necessarily substantive, but um, make changes to it in the first committee. So
Yeah,
it does a number of things, but the overarching uh, goal is to have more transparency in the process uh, from the TNCs in the apps, more like things that the customer knows, more opportunities for the driver to understand where they're going, what direction, how much time, so on and so forth. So they can manage their affairs in a better way, so on and so forth.
yeah. I mean, Uber and Lyft both introduced something called Upfront Fares about 18 months ago. And
Uh-huh.
in some cities that's already available, that the driver sees where they're going before they accept a request. I'm pretty sure it's
Uh-huh.
available in Colorado as well. In some cities, maybe it's not.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. That's the first I've heard of that. But yeah, some of those same principles. A lot of the complaints from the drivers last year when the bill was heard was that, they may say they can only work for another hour, but they don't realize the ride they're accepting is taking them 2 hours out of the way, and it's difficult to manage their time. So this would help give them a general idea of the direction they're headed. So maybe it meshes with their plans to pick up a kid from school and then the general time. So, and the hope really too is to benefit the TNCs as well because there'll be fewer rides that are canceled um, on the back end. So
Absolutely, yeah. No, I
that's
mean,
the hope.
I'm all in for all stakeholders to be present at the table, right? I mean, drivers want certain things, TNCs are opposed to certain things, but one of the biggest, part of this bill is very near and dear to my heart because I get close to 100 emails a week about unjust deactivations or deactivations in
Yeah,
general. And that's, in our world, that's called firing, right? Because,
yeah,
somebody will say something, a passenger trying to get their $6 back, from a trip that they
yep,
did from Uber, and then boom, I'm fired. I'm like, how am I fired?
yeah.
I didn't do anything wrong, right? So there is some things in this bill regarding that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Correct. Yeah, it says on or before May 1st, 2025, TNC is required to develop a driver deactivation policy describing the TNC's procedures and deactivating a driver from a TNC digital platform. So just more clarity as far as what's expected, process, also timelines, so on and so forth along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, instead of
Just
getting fired by an AI bot, I guess, the
yes,
driver will have their say in front of a human, I guess, right?
yes. That's the hope. We haven't fleshed out the entire details, but the hope is that can work towards a way that is mutually beneficial and works for all parties.
Yeah, I read the bill, obviously, or whatever I could read about it that's available to me. And another thing that was in the bill is as far as transparency of rider seeing what the driver is making and the driver seeing what the rider is paying.
Hmm. Correct.
Is that still in the bill?
They're working on amendments, and I was just going through some of the changes. I guess I could pull that up too.
I
Let
mean,
me
no, you don't
see.
have
Let
to.
me
I'm just,
find.
I was just worried because I read the initial language. Obviously, there will be amendments, and then I'll follow up for our audience and keep them posted. The thing to me that's really important, Senator, as a driver, I'm an active driver. I've been a driver for 9 years on Uber and 8 years
Yeah.
on, Lyft, right? One thing that obviously I applaud is the transparency part. And the other part is the opaqueness now that we have with these algorithms, trying to figure out what a trip should cost. Obviously, as you know, they call us independent contractors. We're really not because
Uh,
we don't call the
yeah.
price of the trip. So Uber, decides what the passenger will pay, and Uber decides what the driver will make, right? Because they run the
Mhm.
algorithms. And to me, we've done all this research on our channel actually, is that we've literally like put 4 or 5 drivers side by side at the same time of the day,
Yeah.
at the same place on the exact same
Yeah.
trip. One driver would get paid less, one driver would get paid more for the
Yep.
same job. So that opaqueness is also very bothersome to our community.
Yeah. I remember sitting outside of that bar slash restaurant this summer, and there were drivers with their phones right next to each other,
Yeah.
and they were making that very point. So that's a good point to make.
Yeah. I mean, around this bill, if the opaqueness is kind of, we don't want to I mean, we don't, really don't know what we're supposed to make because before upfront fairs,
Yeah.
we had something called a rate card, meaning like just like a cab, right? We had a meter basically
Uh,
running. It was the time and
yeah.
distance. With upfront fares now, we have no clue. We absolutely have no clue. Do you think the TNCs would be open to more transparency when it comes to those kind of issues?
I'm not quite sure what the question is because I'm not completely familiar with what the
Okay.
upfront
Okay.
pricing is and
Yeah, upfront
how it
fares is
relates to.
basically the TNCs will tell us where to pick up the passenger, okay, and where to drop off the passenger. So we exactly know how far and what time it's going to take us to do the job. But they also throw us a price, like take it or leave it price. This is it, right? And what I've noticed over the last 18 months they introduced this nationwide is that there is no clarity. Like, how come the same job will pay me this much one time and the next time it will pay me that much, right? But I'll still still work with your office if you want to learn more about
Yeah.
this. But
Yeah.
the other
Glad to. I mean, I think one of the points that the TNCs make is a lot of it is like surge pricing and supply and demand of available drivers versus demand on demand on uh, rides. So
yeah.
there is that balance to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I would definitely are keeping that in mind. The only issue with me as far as upfront pricing is that the opaqueness of the algorithms. Before we exactly knew what we were going to make on a trip because it was on a rate card. It was on time and distance. Now we have no
Uh,
clue. We absolutely have no clue. But I think this is a great start. So, but one thing is introducing a bill, obviously, and I actually do speak to a lot of these companies almost weekly and at the very high up
uh,
executive level. And I know how powerful they are. And I know they have deep pockets and I know their lobbying power, right? And to me,
yeah.
one thing is introducing a bill, one thing is passing it. What do you think? How much opposition are you getting after the introduction of the bill?
Um, I mean, it definitely hasn't bubbled up as a super controversial bill. I mean, there are plenty of those going around,
Yeah.
but you know, the point I make to folks interested in legislation is reach out to the members of the committee that it's going to be heard in front of first and foremost, but then also reach out to members of the body it's being heard in. So this is going to be heard in business, labor, and technology next Tuesday, I believe. And so reaching out to the members of that committee before the hearing or showing up and testifying. You can also sign up and testify remotely. And then also reaching out to the members of the Colorado State Senate, because the 35 members of that body will hear it before the Colorado House does.
Yeah, and we have a large community, obviously, of an audience in Denver and in Colorado, different cities.
Yeah.
I talked about this actually on my live stream last week, and I gave you a massive hand saying that, he came around, but to me, I'm willing to
Yeah.
do anything I'm
Well,
able to do.
I I wouldn't necessarily say it the way you said it. Like I last year I felt there was many parts of the bill that had merit, but there were some details that I had uh, concern with, and it was very late in the process
Yeah.
to try to work out those details. And being a contentious bill last year, it would have gummed up other legislation moving through. So that's why I reached out to folks in last July, to try to get the ball rolling and get stakeholders together talking and discussing this. And I've been pleasantly surprised. This was actually my pre-file bill. It was the first bill we introduced because we had done so much work and had those understanding and worked out the details in the language. So, and I'm hopeful it's still going to make its way through the process, and there'll be changes along the way. But it needs as many people to engage and have their points of view heard to help shape the legislation so that good policy is produced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and drivers obviously are part of the stakeholder group, right? I mean, the TNCs are the drivers and the legislators, and what a wonderful way of, bringing everybody to the table. And I am never for, obviously I'm for driver rights, but I'm also thoughtful and understanding that what the TNCs need to accomplish and what the consumers needs, right? I mean, consumers need trips, consumer needs rides. And I'm sensitive to all
Yeah.
those. One last thing is that as far as I'm concerned, you know, proper legislation is the right way to start a dialogue with these companies. Now, where it goes, what happens if they defeat it? Because I'm talking to a lot of legislators, in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in Virginia, and now in Oregon, and there is similar legislation going around. But I think transparency and unjust deactivation parts of these bills, I'm all for it. And if I can do
Mhm.
anything, honestly, Senator, if I can help you or your committee, or you want me to come testify, whatever it is that you need, because I'm knee deep in it. So there's, and I and
Yeah. If you
I'm
could
the
testify
so-called
next
expert.
Tuesday, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great if you could testify next Tuesday, or anyone who is part of your network could show up and testify. You can find it on the Colorado legislative calendar. It'll be listed, the time and the actual room. So,
Oh,
um,
I'm all
yeah,
for it. Is there like a Zoom
mm,
link or something? Can we do it remotely? Obviously.
there's a Zoom link too. We do allow for remote testimony, so it'll probably be a late night with lots of people testifying, but that's what we do down here. We hear from all sides, and it help shape and form good policy. So I know we have looked at a number of other states, like you mentioned, like Washington State.
Yep.
We've looked at some other cities like Chicago and I think Washington, D.C. and New York that have implemented some, and we've borrowed some of that. A lot of the bills just firming up definitions
Yeah.
too. It's firming up timelines of what's allowable. There was really a lot of back and forth on the time to accept a ride. And the early on the ask was 2 minutes, but the TNCs made the point like that might be fine if it's really slow, but if it's a really busy time, you're just going to create this cascading effect of if every driver is taking 30, 40 seconds, the app will just back up with requests and crash. So that was something that both sides realized. Okay, we can try to make it longer than it is, but still be sensitive to. There are some times like the high use times where it's not possible.
Yeah. So is there a part of this that our community can go read, like somewhere? I'll put the links out, obviously, but as far as what the
Yeah,
amendments are.
can pull the bill up. You can pull the bill up, and the bill number is, yes, it's 75. It's Senate Bill 24-075. The 24 just stands for the year.
Right.
So it's 2024. And the dash 075 denotes that it's a Senate bill. If it was a House bill, it would start with the thousands. It
Okay.
would be like 1075. So, but down here, the shorthand, we will throw around the term Senate Bill 75 because we already know that this year the year 24 is baked in.
Okay, great. And I know one more minute of your time. I know Stephanie Vigil has the DNC bill going
Yes.
in the House. I'm assuming it's like dual tracking, I guess, these two
Yep.
bills.
Well, I mean, that's part of what I thought would be a better way to solve the problem compared to last year's bill. If you remember,
Yes.
had TNC and DNC in one
Yep.
bill,
Yep.
and quite honestly, he was creating a lot of confusion among members trying to understand and vote on the issue. So by separating the issues, I think it's helped narrow the focus on, the definitions, the verbiage, the functionality of how each bill works, and the stakeholder process too, because an Uber Eats and a TNC such as Uber, I mean they're the same, but they're different in how they
Yeah.
interact and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the right way to do it, separating the two parts of Uber. Because they're the only company that do both, right? Deliveries and rideshare. The other ones, Lyft and Doordash, they're all in their, they just one thing and one thing only. So, we
yeah,
have like
that's
1 minute.
probably a bad example. I should have used Uber Eats. I'm sorry, I should have used DoorDash and not DoorDash and Lyft are different, not Uber Eats and Uber. But
Right.
yeah, I realized those companies merged.
Yeah. So, with that said, I give you the floor. We have, give our audience some advice, like how, because I'm really interested in the legislative part of this process now, because, we built a massive community of close to 250,000 drivers now, and we have a voice, right? And we want our voices heard through amazing people like yourself. And I think this is a very good start. And then I will definitely be there on Tuesday and
Yep.
at least to hear and testify if I have to. And if we had something to do with this, I'll take the credit. I doubt it, but I applaud you. I mean, I thank you for coming on, and floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Sergio, for having me. And I've really enjoyed working on this issue over the interim and through the fall and winter. I think it's an important issue of our time because this is like a newer industry that's cropped up with technology affecting it, and the technological change isn't going to go away.
Yep.
And we as policymakers need to be proactive and listen to folks who have problems that want us to address them. And that's just what I've heard through the years talking to voters. They expect us to come down here and solve problems and fix things. And in a way, this is something I've heard from drivers throughout the years. I use the TNC apps not often, but more than most people. And then, but also having a business background and having the sensitivity of what certain businesses need to do to make the actual business model work. So I think the real value I've added in the stakeholder process the last 6 to 8 months is honestly just listening, just sitting there and listening and interjecting as little as possible, but getting both sides to talk it out and find understanding and understanding each other's point of view. That's been really powerful, and it's taught me a lot too. Just the fact that listening more is more powerful than always having something to say. So, but that's our job as legislators is to listen to what the concerns are of folks in the population, voters, people in industry, workers, so on and so forth, and that's what we're here for. So, yeah, if you're able to sign up online to testify next Tuesday, or if you want to visit Denver and visit our lovely city and show up at our capital, which is a lovely capital, by all means, you're more than welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time and talking to our audience. I thank you. I really do. I think what you said is 100% correct. Listening, learning, because it's a new industry, with not too much regulation. And look, we don't want to kill Uber and Lyft. We don't want to, the consumer is one on one end, needs these services, and the drivers are trying to make a living. So, I
Yeah.
think you're doing an amazing job with this. So, if I cannot be in Denver in person, I will definitely be testifying on Tuesday. And I think I know enough about it, maybe to put my couple of cents in it. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Be safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Sergio. Thanks for your time. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks for watching this episode of Behind the Wheel on the RideShare Guy. We've been doing these interviews for the past 6 months with very successful drivers from different cities around the nation. Click here for another episode. Make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications for other episodes of Behind the Wheel as well as amazing content on our channel.